My name is Marcus Fischer. I'm an interdisciplinary artist and musician based in Portland, Oregon. Some of the things that drive me in the studio are experimentation. I find myself always looking for new ways to engage with sound and objects, and it often involves a deep exploration phase where I look for different interactions and chain reactions, and then also just sounds that I haven't heard before. Materials are also something that I draw a lot of inspiration from. So I will go deep into one material like brass or aluminum or different things, looking for resonant properties and also ways to shape those things into other forms. Usually when doing research into a project, I'll look into the materiality of any object or a subject and try to find ways to transform that into something else. So in the case of mass project I worked on related to mass shootings, I wound up looking really into brass from shell casings, which then led me into the project called What Remains, which was a mapping project using those same shell casings, but melting them down and transforming them into something else. During 2022, I started really thinking about, this uniquely American phenomenon of mass shootings and how that winds up being something that, you're confronted with all the time in the news, and all of us have gotten to this point of kind of accepting it. And like, what a strange and messed up situation that is, that we see it all the time and are being desensitized to it. And in doing research on that, I started thinking about what is it and why is it, and what are the conditions around that. And I started looking into when the assault weapons ban was lapsed, and then looking into data collection around shootings in general, and it was completely overwhelming. I just didn't even know where to start on it when I was looking at the numbers. So I started making charts and collecting the data from the Gun Violence Archive and other nonprofits who track gun violence. And from those charts, I wound up thinking about what could I do with this information, and they started to play out like a score. And so I used those charts to make a graphic score, which then wound up being transformed into this 14-channel sound installation that I worked on while at the Bemis Center, and then wound up ultimately showing at Oregon Contemporary. It's an array of 12 speakers, where each speaker contains a handful of spent bullet casings. And based on the numbers and the scores that I wound up putting together, the sound that's played through the speakers will vibrate the shell casings depending on how intense that particular month is as far as mass shootings go. So number of people killed and injured affects the action of these casings. My journey to contemporary art came through music. Growing up in Southern California, I was deeply involved in the kind of DIY and experimental music scene there, and being a mixed race kid who comes from immigrant parents, I felt like part of that never quite being one thing or another. I found a community in that through punk rock and DIY. There was kind of a place for people with multiple skills, or came from multiple backgrounds, and that was really something that I hadn't experienced until getting into that. So maybe you're a person who plays music and also is a photographer, or you put on shows, but you like to, screen print t-shirts. Like, it was all really organic and supportive. And that's just like kind of the way that I grew up, with those kind of like you can do anything mentality. So getting into making music and putting on shows and kind of finding different avenues for expression was huge for me. At some point, you can see as a through line through much of my work is the idea of collaboration or engaging with other creative members of my community. The work that comes to mind is Untitled Words of Concern, which was a piece that I made just before the 2017 inauguration. I was at the Robert Rauschenberg residency in Captiva, Florida, and in speaking with the other artists that were in my cohort about the worries and anxieties that we were all having, looking forward that next year as the administration switched over, I realized that, I wasn't alone in having the fears that I had. So I wound up inviting the other artists in my cohort to my studio, and I just had them list like everything that they were concerned about in the coming year or years. And as I collected more of those words, I wound up stacking the voices. So if everyone said racism or the Supreme Court or the Middle East or any of those things, like, so it was a chorus of voices speaking out when each of those topics were reached. So that played as a 3-minute loop from a reel-to-reel tape recorder all throughout an inauguration day. And that piece wound up kind of having a life of its own after it was selected for the 2019 Whitney Biennial. And it was interesting looking from 2017 to 2019, how so many of the things that we were all worried about came true and more. And it was a way of giving like almost like a rallying cry, or that you're not alone with these feelings. And looking now, here we are in 2024, having those same thoughts again, and the stakes are higher. And I find myself revisiting that piece and thinking about the words that were all on our minds at the moment, and how it really is time to band together and maybe set petty grievances aside and think about big picture things. Like, I very much have like the Swiss engineer brain of my father, but then have like the kind of more warm and curious mind of my mother. And that's something that I utilize every day in all of my problem solving or interactions with other people. I think that coming from, these kind of cultures that really don't have that much in common has kind of led me to kind of experience the act of making in a way that's not strictly stuck in one place. I'm at a point where I'm finally getting back to where I felt like I was in 2019 before the pandemic. I think that I spent a good number of years just not making anything new, and felt a lot of guilt about that, just based on what I saw other people around me who were extremely productive or were able to continue working, and I just was not. And I think now I'm okay about that. I don't feel guilty anymore. Like, that was exactly what needed to happen at the time. But now I think that, I'm in a better place to continue making new work and sharing ideas and I want to get back to recording music, which is something that I've really taken a step back from in recent years, focusing more on exhibitions and installations. But yeah, performing again and recording music was something that I really feel like that's something that I'm ready to come back to, which is a really nice feeling. Getting into any subject, when you can boil it down to something that's understandable but has emotional resonance, then it kind of communicates something that's maybe harder to put into words than like a written piece or even something purely visual. When you approach something from multiple sides, it winds up leaving a powerful mark, I think, that people will think about later or take away with them.